Jena tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Shiptascha Karmarita Rangamadye Kripamai Tvam Sharanam Prapana Brinde Namaste Charanarvindam Tavai Vasmi Najivami Tvaivina Iti Vignaya Radhe Tvam Charanantikam. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And I'm offering the same again, millions of times, unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and all our illustrious Rupanuga Guru Vargya, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees. My Dandavat pranams to everybody. So yesterday was a very wonderful day. We celebrated the Rath Yatra festival, and we discussed the disappearance day of Swarup Damodar and Shivananda Sain. So today, Lord Jagannath now is within the compound of the Gundicha Mandir, and we can come back to our Jaiva-Dharma. So, we'll read. Where are we up to? I think we're up to the first one again. So, Fal Shruti on page 829. Pritiviteyata kata dharma name chale bhagavata kahe saha paripurna chale.
As indicated in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, second shloka, all the philosophies on the earth that are celebrated as dharma are utterly deceptive.
That is such a strong statement. I've said this before so many times, but it is. Nevertheless, every time I read it, it's so powerful that all dharmas on earth, unless they're Vaishnava Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, Jaiva-Dharma, are utterly deceptive, because if they're under the direction of a conditioned soul, they must be deceptive, because the conditioned souls always have some type of objective. If you're conditioned, you want something. When you're liberated from that conditioning, you no longer want anything. Chale dharma chadikara satya dharme mati chaturvargya tyaji dari nitya prema gati.
We're not able to hear you.
Haribol. Okay, try now. Anyway, I'm just going to go on reading. One should completely abandon such deceptive dharmas and absorb his mind in true dharma. In other words, one should give up the fourfold goals of material life, dharma, artha, karma, moksha, and aspire solely for the ultimate destination of nitya prem. So these four dharmas of life, this dharma, artha, karma, moksha, they all have some type of material covering over them when they're presented like, and most people in India all follow these. Even in the world they follow these. Even devotees follow these. They're unhappy, they want to be free, they want to be liberated because they're not happy. Where can they find their happiness? So unless we approach the palace of rasa and prem, then we will never be fully satisfied. The soul is longing for that connection in service to Sri Radha, ultimately Sri Radha and Krishna. So that place of consciousness resides in Vrindavan or Goradam. So unless we're moving towards that direction, then the soul is not going to be yeyatma suprasidati. It's not going to be satisfied. So in other words, we can tell that they're deceptive because the soul is not satisfied. If the soul is completely satisfied, we can understand that the soul is in its rightful nitya dharmic position, right? Amitva mimamsa brahme nitya jade buddhi nirvishesha brahma gyana hichita sudhi.
Those who are deluded identify themselves with matter. That is their error. However, one cannot be purified of such delusion by endeavors for Nirvishesh Brahmagyan.
This is just what I was saying. This is just what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying. If it's a material dharma, then you're going to be deluded by matter, by the material energy. The material energy will be blocking your consciousness because you want this achintya bhav that we've spoken so many times. Achintya bhav is that astonishment in something beyond the material. Astonishing. This is the Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said this achintya bhav is so important for the devotees to pick up and appreciate. This achintya bhav goes beyond this material world. Ivichitrata hina pahale nirvishesha hoy kala simutulya seha aprakrita noy.
The Mayavadi thinks Krishna to be subject to the limitations of time, such as birth and death, and considers that he is not transcendental.
Yes, he hasn't opened his consciousness sufficiently. He hasn't taken part. He hasn't followed a path of sadhan bhakti. We have to follow this sadhan under guidance of Sad Guru. Unless you have Sad Guru, pure Guru, you cannot go to that higher state of consciousness. It's not possible. Yes? Thus he rejects
Sri Bhagavan's Vichitrata, astonishing characteristics, paraphernalia, qualities, and Leela. Through this vicious attempt, he is left with the philosophy of Nirvishesh Brahm.
Yes, so we understand, we've talked a lot about this previously. Kande Gyana Haya Dharma Ache Sunishchaya Parikrita Hoile Kabu Aprakrita Naya.
Such base and contemptible Gyan which arises out of an attempt to dismember the divine form of Bhagavan.
It's actually dismembering him, this Jiva Brahma Aikya Gyan, because you're reducing him to a material consideration or conception. It is only fit to be rejected.
It is only fit to be rejected. It is prakrita and should never be given credence. It is prakrita, materialistic, and should never be given credence as aprakrita dharma.
Yes. Aprakrita dharma is that astonishing dharma beyond our material conditioned purview, beyond our material conditioned. Everything in the conditioned consciousness is restricted because it's bound by so many rules and regulations, etc. These are all the different material deceptive dharmas that are binding us in this world. That's why they're all deceptive, because they're all like, we get so many people and they go to the temple, etc. But they're going out of fear. They're thinking that the sky will drop on their heads if they don't go to the temple. They're thinking they won't get what they want unless they go to the temple. Everything is fear driven. But this path of transcendence, the pure path of Shuddha Bhakti, is driven by greed, by anxiousness to please Krishna, only wanting to please Radha and Krishna. How to please Radha and Krishna? How to please Radha and Krishna? Tell me.
By serving their associates.
And how do you serve their associates? Making lunch for them every day. Okay. Okay. Yes. Serving their associates. Huh? Yes, dasanuga is very good. Looking for that service to melt the heart of those sadhus. You know, like a child, the father gives the child pocket money. The child, he saves all the pocket money and he buys a beautiful sweater for the father. And he comes to look what I've done with the money that you've given me. Father's heart must melt. It's in that melting process that the love is manifesting thickly. And it's in that channel that bhakti can be transferred from the guru to the shishya. When that relationship becomes, you may take anusthanik diksha. That means just ritualistic diksha. Yes, you have that. But this vidva rudhi diksha, this is internal diksha. This is the real diksha. So many disciples may have anusthanik diksha, but only 3 or 4 may actually have that vidva rudhi diksha, that internal diksha. So we should always aspire for that. Otherwise, what is the value if it's external? Always looking for the internal connection. How to connect internally. What do I have to do? Be hungry for that. Be desperate for that. Because that hunger, that lobe, that greed, like she comes every day. She doesn't understand a word of English. You know, I'm just amazed that so she has some greed. She has loba. She has desire. So mercy must come. Some creeper must come in your heart. It must come. This is seva, you know. We used to do the same with my Gurudev. We would come many times. We didn't understand anything. And we would just listen to the Hindi or the Bengali and not understand. But this is this is good for her, but not easy just to come and just to sit like that, you know. But it's very many good points for Sukriti. Okay, we're at chapter 10, 236, I believe. Where did we reach?
The sloka we stopped.
Oh, the last sloka. We read that Manusmriti sloka, right? Yes. I'll read the translation again. So this is a very amazing chapter, this chapter 10. It's drawing to a close now. We'll actually complete it today. But we can recap and just appreciate how Vaishnava Das has explained clearly, according to Shastra, the authenticity, the historical reality of this Vaishnava Dharma, which goes back to Lord Brahma and the beginning of creation. This is where it goes to. We have to know this very strongly. We have to know this clearly, and all the proofs are here. You may, in future, someone may ask you about this. Many people have the same question. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is opening up these questions because he knows many people are asking these questions, especially here in Bengal, where Durga Ma reigns supreme, and this is the home of Nimai Pandit. This is where he came. So there's many objections they're raising, so we should know what is the clear answer for this and appreciate this. If you take notes during this chapter, you'll have some indication and then gradually absorb it deeply. Notes are very important. So the last translation of the last verse quoted: abstinence from activities such as sexual indulgence, meat eating, and intoxication yields highly beneficial results, although a human being is naturally inclined to them. A human being is inclined to them because he's just coming out of animal consciousness. The human being is like evolving, well, not evolving, but his consciousness is evolving over time. And what is that evolution of consciousness? It's coming from an animal state of consciousness. He may be in a human body, but if he's thinking like animals think, they react to the environment. An animal, right? An animal will be looking fearfully around all the time, be afraid. Always his senses are tuned to being attacked by another animal, right? Is it correct or not? So, and then they want to eat, and then they want to sleep, and then they want to have sex life. This is exactly like a lower state of consciousness human being. So we are on that level. That's why we have to have those 4 principles: no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling, at least to bring us out of the animal platform. But that doesn't mean you're really a devotee yet. It means you're just on the human level. Most or many people in Hindu culture,
they already follow those four principles from birth. You know, from a respectable family, they'll follow those four principles from birth. So it's no issue. But in the Western world, nobody follows those four principles. Where is it ever? Have you ever met any Western person who actually follows those four principles from birth? Very, very rare. Very rare. So we have to go through a huge change of consciousness. We really are coming from the animal platform. And as we're moving through our different levels of appreciating who is Krishna, these lower sanskars, they can tend to challenge us regularly, and they have to be purified again and again. And how to purify them? Through the power of the holy name, through the power of Sankirtan, through the power of Sadhu Sangha, through the power of being in the Dham. We should understand where are all these power points to move forward spiritually. So all those that I've mentioned, the name, the Dham, Sadhu Sangha, and Mahaprasad, bathing in the holy rivers, seeing Lord Jagannath in Ratha Yatra, all of these, and going on parikrama. Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, especially Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is like the Amala Purana. It has everything is there. There's that beautiful verse, Aradayo Bhagavan Brijesha, Tanayas Taddama Vrindavanam, Ramya Kachit Upasana Braja, Vaduru Vagena Vakalpita. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam, Amalam Prema Pumatonata. This is the evidence for all of the truths in existence, which is to worship Krishna, the son of Nanda Baba, and honor the Braja Ramanis, the gopis of Vrindavan. That's our path. So coming, we may hear these things, but how can we enter deeply into those topics and stay there? We don't just want to hear them a little bit and then go away, a little bit, then go. We want to stay in these divine topics, but we have this heavy sanskar from the material world to purify. So these anarthas, they will rise. And we've seen the history. How long has this Vaishnava Dharma been prevalent in the Western countries? Perhaps 50 years. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was the one who actually spread it. So in that time, how many people have embraced it and gone away? More have gone away than have stayed, because these animal propensities call us back to that origin, because we haven't had sufficient inspiration and we haven't had time to gather the sukriti and sanskar to maintain our position. Living in the holy dham will certainly increase that sanskar, and sadhu sangha is going to increase that sanskar, and chanting Hari Nam, and certainly embracing Srimad Bhagavatam. If we read Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, these activities have to be done on a regular basis. Otherwise, regularly, these lower vegas, pushings, Vacho Vegam, Manasakrodha Vegam, Jiva, these vegas, these pushings will come and attack us. So we need to have that suit of armor, that of Sukriti and Sanskar.
Maharaj, we were speaking about that consciousness evolvement. In introduction, we learned, right? Achadita Chetana, Sankulita Chetana.
Yes.
That's described.
That's not evolving, though. That's describing the 5 states of consciousness of the trees, of the animals, of the lower human birth, of the middle human birth, and of the uttam. These 5 stages. We're not evolving in that sense, though.
But like, suppose we have animal.
If we've had an animal birth, we will evolve to a human birth. Yes.
So that Chetana is called, means we can't be related to that, my question.
Yes, it is related to that.
But you're not saying.
But we're not saying like the Darwin theory that we evolve through the different species like that. That's why I didn't spell it out clearly, because I was thinking in my mind, we're not Darwinists, you know, but we evolution of the consciousness, not of the body. But still, the consciousness of the different bodies is clearly delineated and spoken about in the introduction to Jaiva-Dharma. This achadita chetana, the lower consciousness of trees. This is showing where is the consciousness. Consciousness is the symptom of the soul. So we understand that trees have consciousness, animals have consciousness. Then the lower humans, they have consciousness. The middle humans, Mukalita Chaitana, they have consciousness. And then Purna Vikasheta Chaitana, that is the realized soul. So we are evolving through states of consciousness, not through species. So don't blur it and say, oh, we have to be a tree. It's a fact that we have been trees, we have been animals, but it's this consciousness that has the prime consideration, not the body. Otherwise, you're going to Darwin theory, isn't it? And that's not acceptable. Do you understand, Achyuta? We're not Darwinists.
We shouldn't go down.
Hopefully, we still have to pray for Kripa. Even Jad Bharat went down. Jad Bharat was on a state of bhav. He was crying. His hairs were standing on end. In his meditation, he was completely on a stage of bhav. But because he didn't have any association, and because of some past karma, then Krishna, or because Krishna wanted to give him mercy to make him more greedy. Sometimes if we get pushed back down, but Jad Bharat is different because he remembered his previous birth as Jad Bharat when he was even in the body of a deer, but still in the body of a deer, he was completely subjected to the consciousness of a deer. It wasn't like he was walking around thinking totally, I'm Jad Bharat. He had to eat, he had to sleep, all kinds of things in the body of an animal. An animal is very, his senses are dulled, just like the animals can stay outside in the storms. They can stay outside in the heat. They don't suffer the same pains that the sensitive human beings suffer, right? So he's saying that abstinence from activities such as these yields highly beneficial results. It just brings us to the human platform, although a human being is naturally inclined to them. Yes, when you're on the human platform, then you're naturally averse to all of these negative, to intoxication, to illicit sex. You realize that sex life is for procreation alone. It's to have children. You'll see in many cultured Indian homes, the husband and wife never engage in sex life unless they want to have a child. They never even think about it unless they want to have a child. This is normal in Indian household life. They won't even think about it unless they want to have a child. Whereas every part of the Western culture is geared to agitating that sensual pleasure. Lord Brahma, he's put a coating of pleasure on the genital so that we will create children. If we didn't have that pleasure coating, probably most people would not even have children, because children are a hassle. You have to send them to school, you have to wipe their noses, you have to do all kinds. They disturb you in the night. There's so many problems with the children, But to offset that, Lord Brahma's put this pleasure coating on the genital. But the Western civilization take that pleasure coating to be the highest bliss. We see all Western culture. Every billboard has a half-naked woman on it. Every advertisement has a woman to try and attract, and it works. That's why they do it. All the way through this sensuality based on sex. Prabhupada says in one commentary, the demons are very fond of sex life. That singles out someone who is born of a lower consciousness, a demon, adharmic. They are fond of sex life. Nyayaratna. Yes, but why do the Vaishnavas object to the Shraddha ceremony and other activities that are meant to repay one's debts to the forefathers? So Nyayaratna is really coming out with a lot of objections here, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur wants to clear all these objections. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is on a mission to give the pure Siddhanta to the world, to give the way that a spiritually advanced soul can make progress in this material world. He's doing it so kindly, so patiently, unpacking every feature of it. Vaishnav Das, people who are intent on carrying out prescribed pious duties perform the Shraddha ceremony in accordance with the Karmakand division of the Vedas. Vaishnavas have no objection to this, but Shastra declares, Devarshi Bhutapta Nirnam Pritninam, Na Kinkaro Nyam Nrini Cha Rajan, Sarvatmana Ya Sharanam Sharanyam, Gato Mukundam Parihritya Kartam. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.41. This is Krishna's conversation with Uddhav. O king, when a human being gives up the ego of independence from Bhagavan and takes full shelter of Sri Mukunda as the supreme refuge, he is released from his debts to the devas, sages, the general living entities, family members, mankind, and to the forefathers. Such a devotee no longer remains subordinate to such personalities, nor is he bound to their service. So Nyayaratna doesn't know this. He thinks everything has to be done according to the ritual because everyone around is performing all these activities. Because people don't think, they don't question. Even today, people don't think. People are walking around like morons, they're not thinking what is going on around them, very much outside of their own eating and sleeping and sex life and being afraid. They're not really thinking. But a Vaishnava, we call it an expression out of the box. He's thinking. He's opened his consciousness. As soon as you chant the first name of Hare Krishna, with sincerity, immediately your consciousness is going to open up and you're going to start perceiving the real world, that you are very tiny and Krishna is that supreme Lord. And your natural condition is to serve him and bring him pleasure. And then we evolve how to do that. We've gone through this before. How can I please Krishna? What is bringing Krishna the most pleasure is when Krishna is with Sri Radhika. So Radhika brings Krishna the most. So if I serve Sri Radhika, I am bringing Krishna the most pleasure. But then what happens? My attraction to Radhika becomes even more than my attraction to Krishna. And this actually is the process. This actually is what Mahaprabhu has come to give, this Manjari Bhav, this service. That Sthai Bhav is called Bhavalas, that wanting to just please Sri Radhika. Huh? Tat Tat Bhav Ichamai. Yes, this Tat Tat Bhav Ichamai means only focusing on Radhika. That Sambhog Ichamai is, we don't have that, that is not available for us. That Sambhog Ichamai, those Sakhis have the potency to enjoy with Krishna directly. They're Kaya Vyuha from Sri Radhika. They can directly embrace Krishna in the Ras Leela. We can't do that. We don't have that adhikar, but we have the adhikar to serve Sri Radhika.
Do we serve in Radhika in Ras Leela?
The Manjaris are sitting on the edge. They're looking for seva. That mood of seva, seva, seva. This is the most intoxicating place to catch with when you're just performing seva and you're pleasing your Swamini. You're pleasing Sri Radhika. They're looking for opportunities because there has to be refreshment at some time. There has to be all kinds of... Ras Leela means all of the different pastimes. It means the water pastimes. It means the gambling pastimes. It means the drinking the honey mead pastimes. It means so many, picking flowers, wandering through the forest. All of these pastimes are meaning Ras Leela. It's all the Leela of the Ras. But we should always remember that this Ras Leela is nothing to do with Kam Leela. Kam Leela is that material mood of wanting to take something. It's Kam Vijay. Kam has been defeated in the Ras Leela. So none of that lust is there in those pastimes for us to. So the manjaris are always serving. Consequently, bhaktas who have taken shelter of Bhagavan are not required to perform the Shraddha ceremony and other karmakand activities meant for gaining release from the debt to one's forefathers. Actually, what the Vaishnavas do is that they send their forefathers by their activities beyond this material world. They liberate 7 or 14 or 21 generations of their forefathers by their practice. So why should they perform the Shraddha ceremony? They already have liberated their predecessors. They are instructed to worship Bhagavan and offer Bhagavat Prasad to the forefathers. Yes, we offer Bhagavat. We have a beautiful Shraddha ceremony. If your father or mother leave this world, we'll do a beautiful Shraddha ceremony. We'll offer prasadam to Thakurji. After this, we will give that prasadam to the deceased. That prasadam is going to catapult him over the 3 worlds to a much higher destination. And to honor Bhagavat Prasad with their friends and relatives. This is what we do. If somebody leaves this body, the remaining relatives, they will sponsor a feast for all the Vaishnavas in the name of that person. This is what the Vaishnavas do. This is how we honor and celebrate this. Nyayaratna. At what point does one obtain the position and eligibility to act in this way? It's a very good question. When do you consider yourself a Vaishnava? Just because you wear kantimala, tilak, does that make you a Vaishnava? On one level it is, but is that, are you really devoted to Krishna in every moment of your life? Are you feeling that way? It is the prerogative, Vaishnav das. It is the prerogative of a Vaishnava to act in this way, and one becomes eligible from the time that he awakens faith in Harikatha and Harinam. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tavat karamani kuvita na nivedyate yavata. Mat kata shranvado va shraddha yavan najayate. One is obliged to engage in karma and to follow the rules and prohibitions associated with that path as long as one has not awakened detachment from fruitive activities and the result of such activities, such as promotion to the celestial planets, or as long as one has not awakened faith in hearing and chanting my Leela Gata. So unless Shraddha has actually come in the heart of the practicing devotee, then he's not really fully a Vaishnava. He's like the Kanishtas that we discussed in the previous chapter. He hasn't really embraced fully the full precepts of Vaishnava-Dharma. He's still on the Kanishta platform. He's not really, his faith hasn't come. Nyayaratna, I am delighted to hear your explanations. Seeing your scholarship and fine discrimination, my faith has now been awakened in Vaishnava Dharma. Yeah, there hasn't been a single question he's asked that hasn't been conclusively answered, purified completely. My brother Harihara, there is no profit in debating any further. These Vaishnavas are great teachers among Pandits. They are exceedingly expert in extracting the conclusions of all the Shastras. We may say whatever we like to preserve our occupation, but it is highly doubtful whether someone has ever appeared in the land of Bengal, or in all of India for that matter, who can compare with such a renowned scholar and exalted Vaishnava as Nimai Pandit. Let us go. The day is waning, and it will be difficult to cross the Ganga after dark. Nyayaratna and his group of teachers departed, calling out, Haribol, Haribol. The Vaishnavas began to dance and chant Jai Sachinanda. So this is a successful story. Previous times, when in the last chapter, when Digambar walked away, he was chanting to the tantric. So that couldn't be changed. But here, because these personalities, Harihara and Nyayatra, they had some sanskar, some type of sukriti was there that could become purified. Is that the right time? Okay. So that's a very beautiful chapter 10. So we can begin a little bit on chapter 11, if you like. We can go a little bit more. So chapter 10, Ki Jai. So now we come to a whole nother conception. Chapter 11, Nityadam and idolatry. This chapter is going to be about the Muslims and about worshipping the deity. So all these topics are quite remarkable. They all have great potency, and we should try to enter into each of these different topics and sections carefully. On the western bank of the Bhagirathi, in the Koladweep district of Navadweep, there is a famous village named Kulia Paharpur. At the time of Sriman Mahaprabhu, a highly respected and influential Vaishnava named Sri Madhava Das Chattopadhyaya, also known as Chakori Chattopadhyaya, lived in that village. Chakori Chattopadhyaya had a son named Shilavamsi Vardhan Thakur. By the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Vamsi Vardhanandana had tremendous power and authority. Everyone addressed him as Vamsi Vardhanandan Prabhu because they regarded him as an incarnation of Krishna's flute. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing about a reality here. He's bringing in the real history of Navadvip Dham. He was renowned as a special recipient of Sri Vishnu Priya's mercy. After Sri Priyaji's disappearance, Vamsi Prabhu transferred the deity whom she had worshipped from Sridham Mayapur to Kulia Parapur. Actually, it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Also, he assisted in this.
Who is this Priyaji?
Huh?
Who is this Priyaji?
Vishnu Priya.
Vishnu.
After Vishnu Priyas, but it says Priyaji. Vishnu Priya. To Kulia Paharpur, and his descendants carried out the service of this deity for some time after that. However, when his descendants obtained the mercy of Sri Janava Mata and moved from Kulia Paharapur to Sripat Bhaghanapara, the worship of the deity was continued in Kuliagram by the Sevites of Malancha, from Malancha. Kuliagram is situated on the opposite side of the Ganga from Prachina, old Navadvip. At that time included many small settlements, among which Chinadanga, and a few others were quite famous. Once a devotee merchant of Chinadanga arranged a spiritual festival in the temple of Kulia Paharapur and issued invitations to many Brahman Pandits and all the Vaishnavas within the 32 square mile circumference of Navadvip. On the day of the festival, the Vaishnavas came from all directions, each accompanied by their own entourage. Sri Anantadas came from Sri Nrsimhapali. Gaurachand Das Babaji came from Sri Mayapur, and Narayan Das Babaji came from Sri Bilva Pushkarini. The renowned Narahari Das came from Sri Modrum. Sri Paramahamsa Babaji and Sri Vaishnav Das came from Sri Godram, and Sri Sachinandan Das came from Samudragar. So this is how the Vaishnavas lived at the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, before the inauguration of mutts. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is writing here historically. We should appreciate that all the Vaishnavas, they lived in their separate places, but they would meet collectively for festivals. but they didn't have any kind of institutional thing whatsoever. It was nothing like that. They just had groups of Vaishnavas that were favorable to each other in their moods, and they would live with each other in the different holy places. And regularly they would come together to meet. So this is very interesting. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't encourage or advise his son to make institutions. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati saw with his compassionate mood that the institution was going to support the bewildered Vaishnavas in this time of history, when they would be bewildered by the external circumstances and living in groups together under an organized arrangement, that they would be protected and so on. But we see even now at Swananda Sukhada Kunj, there's only 5 devotees there. 5 devotees are operating that place. There's a pujari, there's a cook, there's someone who makes a little bit of money and collects, someone who does different kirtan, someone who works in the garden. Only 5. It's almost like the blueprint of what it was like in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time. And here in Surabhi Kunj, there's only basically one person down here, and that's Avadut Maharaj. But his mother and father are here also, and a couple of other sevaks in the kitchen. But there's nobody else in both of these places, and neither are really strictly under any authoritative group. So that's interesting that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he didn't want that, because he told his son that when you have an institution, then Bhakti Devi can't remain there. But nevertheless, for the Western world in particular, the institution has been necessary to certainly bring devotees together initially. It doesn't mean that they're going to have to stay with although Prabhupada, he wanted that institution to remain out of his mercy, because he thought that many people would take shelter there. But we should understand the restrictions within the institutional conception, that as soon as Bhakti Devi comes, the wings will form on the individual, but they will have to be cut, because you can't fly individually, independently. Always the slogan is, don't be independent, but Bhakti Devi herself is independent, and each individual practitioner is independent. And we collectively come to perform some seva, but we have to encourage our own independence, not this collective spirit necessarily. Just like we described in the Gundicha yesterday, how all the Vaishnavas cleaning would collect their own piles of dirt in the temple, and how the gopis, they ran alone to the Rasastali, how when you go to Sankarikor, you walk alone through that Sankarikor place. So we have to develop our independent vision of Krishna, and then you bring that independent strength collectively to a group, if there's such a group that fits in with the same desires that you have understood, and then you can operate in that way. But just when you have one large, broad institution dominating and directing, then the independent nature of the jiva is going to be restricted. It's not going to be able to come out fully. You understand? You have to think about it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wasn't encouraging that, but his son did it out of his compassion. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did that. The Vaishnavas' foreheads were decorated with vertical tilak markings, Uddhav Pundra, indicating that their bodies were temples of Sri Hari. On their necks they wore tulsi mala, and their limbs looked splendid, being stamped with the names of Sri Gauranityananda. Some held Harinam malas in their hands, and others loudly performed Sankirtan of the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. They're not all doing the same. Some are chanting on their mala, some are performing Sankirtan. It's like this individuality has to be, especially today in the particular climate that we live in, of global chaos that is around us. This individuality is very important. If you're suddenly alone in the world, will you know how to act and behave? It's necessary. to the accompaniment of mridanga and kartals, and some danced continuously as they moved along, chanting Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. In the bodies of many of the Vaishnavas were seen the external manifestations of ecstasy, such as torrents of tears and hairs standing on end. While weeping, some called out fervently, "O Gaura Krishna, when will you grant me a vision of your eternal pastimes in Navadvip?" In other words, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is describing some very mature Vaishnavas who are all gathering for this festival. He's showing us what a group of mature Vaishnavas, how they act and what they look like. Because he can see in his vision how the Vaishnavas will become now in this more degraded age of Kali, how we'll be compromised. While weeping, some called out, oh yes, there were many groups of Vaishnavas who sang Sri Nam with the accompaniment of mridanga and other instruments as they walked. The women of Kulia, who were also bhaktas of Sri Gauranga, became astonished to see these spiritual emotions and praised the spiritual good fortune of the Vaishnavas. Proceeding in this way, the Vaishnavas arrived at the Natya Mandir, the dancing mandir, directly adjacent to the deity's altar. They're coming to see Vishnu Priya. All of them are coming to see Vishnu Priya. This was where Sriman Mahaprabhu would dance and perform Sankirtan. The merchant who was sponsoring the festival greeted all of them. As a symbol of submission, he wore a cloth around his neck and fell at the Vaishnava's feet, expressing sentiments of great humility. When all the Vaishnavas were seated in the Natya Mandir, the temple Sevites brought prasadam, flower garlands, and placed them around their necks. Brought prasadam, flower garlands, not prasadam and flower garlands. Sorry, I read that wrong. He brought prasadam. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is making it very clear. You just don't go to the flower walla and bring garlands and then give them to. These were prasadam flower. They'd all been offered to other persons. This is what we talked about yesterday. You know this, Achyuta. You never offer anything to a Vaishnava that hasn't already been offered. It has to be prasadam. So the flower garlands also were prasadam. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying it very clearly. Prasadam flower garlands were placed them around their necks. Otherwise, why should a Vaishnava want to wear a garland that's just been bought off a flower walla just to celebrate his own self? The Vaishnava will get happiness from honoring prasadam, from honoring a Vaishnava, from honoring a mala, not from wearing a mala for his own glorification. The poetic shlokas of Sri Chaitanya Mangal were then melodiously chanted, and upon hearing the ambrosial lila of Sri Chaitanya Day, these Vaishnavas began to manifest various types of sattvic bhavs. Now, this Chaitanya Mangal could be the Chaitanya Bhagavat that hadn't yet been renamed the Chaitanya Bhagavat, or it could be Lochan Das's Chaitanya Mangal, because Lochan Das has written one Chaitanya Mangal, and then Vrindavan Das Thakur, he wrote one with the same name, but then his mother, Narayani, she suggested, no, we call it Chaitanya Bhagavat. So I have a feeling that this is the Chaitanya Bhagavat, actually, that the devotees are about to read, not the Chaitanya Mangal of Lochan Das. This is what I think. While they were thus absorbed in Prem Ananda, the doorkeeper entered and addressed the authorities of the temple. The chief mullah of Satsaika Paragana is sitting outside the assembly hall with his associates and followers. He requests to have a discussion with some of the Vaishnava Pandits. The temple authorities in turn informed the exalted Pandit Babajis that the mullah had arrived and desired to speak with them. As soon as the Vaishnavas received this news, due to a break in the flow of transcendental ras, the mood of the assembly became overcast with dejection. That's not like a bias. It's that the Vaishnavas were intoxicated with their own transcendental glorification. And then they realized that actually this means we have to now compromise and cut some jungles of philosophy with the Muslims that are coming to speak to us, which they do. Krishna Das Babaji Mahashai of Sri Madhyadweep inquired from the temple authorities, "What is Mullah Sahib's intention?" Knowing the Mullah's purpose, they replied, "The Mullah Sahib wants to discuss some spiritual matters with the Vaishnava Pandits." They added that the Mullah was the foremost amongst Muslim scholars and was highly respected by the Emperor of Delhi. Although always devoted to the promotion of his own religion, he was not in the least inimical or belligerent towards other religions. The temple authorities humbly requested that one or two Vaishnava Pandits should come forward and discuss the Shastra with him to display the preeminence of the sacred Vaishnava Dharma. It wasn't that they were thinking, oh, yes, what a great opportunity to preach. Let's run out and preach. This is being represented by the Emperor of Delhi. They didn't have any mood for like that. They actually had a mood to hear Harikatha. I can remember one time when my Gurudev was in Miami and staying in one very wealthy devotee, and we were on like the 10th floor, and Barack Obama was doing a program in the ground floor. This was when he was the president of the US. And the devotees came all very enthusiastic. "Oh, Gurudev, you can come down and meet Barack Obama if you want. He's down there and he'll meet with you." And Gurudev said, "If he wants to come and see me, he can come up and see me." My Gurudev had no desire to go and meet some sort of corrupt politician. He knew exactly what was. And if that person came to him, you see, that person would have to be of a submissive mood. If he had come up all those flights of stairs or lift, he would have been in a submissive mood. If my Gurudev had gone to him, it would be like my Gurudev wanted something from him. We don't want anything from any wealthy politician, nothing whatsoever. But if the politician wants to inquire from us, the Vaishnava is very happy to distribute Vaishnava Dharma. So the Mullah very humbly had come to the Vaishnavas. So the Vaishnavas were feeling impelled to reciprocate with that mood that the Mullah had. And a very nice conversation is about to happen, actually. Some of the Vaishnavas felt inspired to speak with the Mullah Sahib, seeing an opportunity to propound Vaishnava Dharma. This is like the preaching mood was there. In the end, they decided amongst themselves that Gaurachand Das, Pandit Babaji of Sri Mayapur, Vaishnav Das, Pandit Babaji of Sri Godaram, Prem Das Babaji of Janunaga, and Kali Pavan Das Babaji of Champahatta should discourse with the Mullah Sahib. All the other Vaishnavas could also go to witness their discussion when the recitation of Chaitanya Mangal was completed. Hearing this decision, the four Babajis loudly explained, "Jai Nityananda," because Nityananda is the crest jewel of all preachers. He is the principal preacher for all of Mahaprabhu's success in Bengal. Mahaprabhu wasn't preaching in Bengal, it was Nityananda who was preaching in Bengal. For the 18 years that Mahaprabhu was staying in Puri, it was Nityananda Prabhu who spread this cult very strongly with Advaita Prabhu and Srivas Thakur and all the Vaishnavas here. But it was under the guidance of Nityananda. Of course, Mahaprabhu was promoting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but Mahaprabhu wasn't here. He was in Puri, absorbed deeply in his bhajan. I think I'm going to stop here now because it's a very convenient place to stop. It's an incredible set. I'll just read this one paragraph because it's a very beautiful picture. The mullah and his company were seated in the courtyard under the pleasant and cooling shade of a large banyan tree. When they saw the Vaishnavas approaching, the mullah with his party stood up cordially and received them. I mean, the mullah, all these Muslims, they've all come on their beautiful horses. So their horses are all there too. They're wealthy Muslims, and they command some sort of respect. So it's a respectful assembly. When they saw the Vaishnavas approaching, the mullah and his party stood up cordially to receive them. So all the way along, first of all, by coming to approach the Vaishnavas, and then by standing up. It's described actually, if a great person comes into the room and you don't stand up, your life airs become disturbed, because the great person whose life airs are more potent than yours, if you don't stand up to receive him, your life airs will get disturbed. So always we stand up. So the mullah is showing respect to stand up here. Knowing all jivas to be servants of Krishna, the Vaishnavas in turn offered dandavats to Sri Vasudev, situated in the heart of the mullah and his associates, and then took their respective seats. Bhaktivinoda Thakur is very clearly describing how we should act. If a Muslim comes, we should try to see Paramatma feature in the heart of that, go beyond the external dress and try to see the soul, the super soul within the heart of that Muslim. They know that the external, we've already discussed, I think, in chapter 7 and chapter 6, or what was it? Yes, these chapters about Devidas when he was disturbed by the Qazi. And many subjects were brought up then that a Muslim can't engage in the same social acts as a Vaishnava, but nevertheless he has the opportunity to embrace fully Vaishnava-Dharma. But externally he can't engage in all the social activities, like a Muslim can't marry a Brahmin girl, for example. Understand? So that was all explained. The setting was extraordinary to behold. This is what I was wanting to say, the picture. On one side sat 50 well-dressed Muslim scholars with their white beards, with their majestic decorated stallions tethered behind them. So they're beautiful horses, and they were looking very respectable in their attire. On the other side, 4 Vaishnavas of divine appearance sat in a humble mood. With great anticipation, many Hindus came and sat behind them. Many others gathered there as well, taking seats nearby. So I'll lend it here. So we get the picture. This is a very beautiful assembly that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has created this impression for us to see with respect these different personalities. Not that we're always battling, shouting, abusing, sending insults, but actually how does a respectable, even though they're completely different, I mean, the Muslims, they kill cows. You know, the Vaishnavas don't. Why should the Vaishnavas want to go and speak to the Muslims? But because the Muslims have been so respectful in approaching the Vaishnavas have agreed. And also the Vaishnavas, of course, know the history of Chankazi, how Mahaprabhu behaved with the Qazi. How did Mahaprabhu behave with the Qazi? He called the Qazi his maternal uncle. Was it Chata? How do you say it in Hindi?
Chacha.
Chacha, yes, like uncle. And they spoke like this. So Mahaprabhu, because always the power of love is going to influence people. Never this confrontation. That will never help in any respect. It's only the power of love that's going to have any effect anywhere with anyone's consciousness. There's that expression in English, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. In other words, you can't coerce, you can't change someone's heart by force, only by love. So that's what the Vaishnavas are demonstrating from the very beginning. They've decided to leave their warm assembly of transcendental Qatar and come out and cut some jungles with the Muslims. Gold Premanandi, Jai, chapter 11, Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki Jai. Gold Premanandi. Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhavevacha, Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnave Namo Namaha. Is it off?